Tim Donaghy, NBA ref, spent 11 months in prison for. Hey, Tim, let me ask you, what was the 11 months? What was the actual charge? What was, how would you what was the actual charge?
Wire fraud for passing illegal information over state lines.
What does that mean? What did that mean in your case?
It meant that I did 11 months. I'm not sure what it meant, other than the fact that I was giving inside information, kind of like insider tips on stocks on these NBA games. So when they can't find something to charge you with, they always say they use wire fraud statute, and it always works.
Hey, well, then let me ask you this, because we all think we know what happened, right? Everybody thinks they know you did this, you did that. But has the narrative of what you did kind of gone off the rails here? And if so, how?
I think it's escalated to the fact that, this guy from ESPN who wrote this article is trying to say that I fixed games because he talked to certain people and he did his analysis. But if you look at the people he talked to, he talked to people that I had problems with. It was a book publisher that I sued and won $1.7 million from for my book Personal Foul. It was a guy that I had a restraining order against. It was my ex-wife. I never told anybody I fixed games, and all of a sudden all these people are coming out saying, oh, yeah, he confided in me and told me that he fixed games, which is not true. And, the bottom line is the FBI and the NBA both did an investigation and concluded that I didn't fix games. So I don't know how that this guy allowed it to escalate to this point and print this stuff.
So you said, and this is one of the reasons I asked this question, you said you didn't participate because this smelled like a hit job to you. You kind of felt like going in, there was no reason for you to participate because the narrative was going to be what the narrative was.
Exactly. He had spoken to a lot of people who had called me and said, hey, listen, this guy just knocked on my door, and I spoke to him, and he was asking me about you and fixing games in the NBA, and next thing I knew, the guy was constantly calling me, and I ended up blocking his telephone number. And then he knocked on my door 2 days in a row, and the second time he knocked on the door, I told him, I said, listen, I had enough out of you. I'm not talking to you. If you knock on my door again, there's going to be a problem. And he went away and never showed up again.
Is it when you look at what you are charged with and what you've done, do you regret anything? And if so, what?
Absolutely. I mean, I certainly regret gambling and crossing that line and, betting on NBA games and passing along information, on who I felt was going to win a game based on relationships that existed between referees and players in the NBA, both positive and negative. And I felt like it affected the line, and, I should have kept that stuff to myself and went about doing my job and not got involved in passing that information along.
How did it come that you did get involved in that?
I was gambling a lot. I was gambling on the golf course, going to the casinos, betting on college and pro football, and it just escalated to my buddy had the Daily News one day, and I had just come from home. I knew who was refereeing the games, and he said, give me a couple winners in the NBA tonight. And I gave him 3 games, and they all won. And the next day, he gave me a call and he said, is it that easy for you? And I just said, yeah, it is. And unfortunately, I fell into a trap of giving him tips. And then it came to tips on games I officiated when I was in the locker room or I was in a tape session where I knew a team was going to be at an advantage or a disadvantage. And we ended up winning about 80% of the time.
So the idea that you owed gamblers money or you were doing this, in conjunction with the mafia, which is a narrative out there, that's not even close to true, or is it?
No, that is true. I didn't know anybody money. What happened is when me and my buddy decided to stop doing it, what I didn't know is this friend of mine was passing these tips along to people associated with organized crime. So when we stopped, they were making so much money, they wanted these tips to continue, and they picked me up outside of a hotel in Philadelphia, told me that they were getting the tips, and if I didn't continue to give them to them, that they were going to have somebody visit my wife and kids in Florida or expose me to the NBA for betting. And I decided to continue to give them the games.
Did you give any thought to going to the NBA? Did you give any thought to going to the FBI to stop it?
No, because at that point I wanted to keep my job, and I knew if I did that I would have lost my job. So I was just hoping by the end of the basketball season, it would be over. And we all know that wasn't the case, that it was heard over a Gambino wiretap, and that's how the investigation started, and that's how I got caught.
Hey, Tim Donaghy joins us, and I appreciate you very much. I as you know, I mean, you're an interesting guy, and a lot of people want to talk. Is it common? We saw today, where Scott Foster and Chris Paul and Harden. Is it common for refs and players to legitimately hate each other, to legitimately dislike each other? Is that true? Is that accurate?
Absolutely, and that's a lot of the things that I was using in regard to passing the tips along. Obviously, Foster's had a problem with the Dallas Mavericks. He's had a problem with the Houston Rockets. I can go back 20 years where Mike Mathis and Charles Barkley hated each other, and we knew as referees when Mathis was on a game with Barkley there was going to be fireworks, and we laughed about it in the locker room before and after the game, and that's the kind of stuff that I used in passing these tips along to these gamblers, and it affects the lines, and the officials let the emotions and their hatred or like for somebody help or hurt a team, and that's what happens, and obviously that's what happened with Foster last night. I think with James Harden, I think he's gotten out of control with pushing off and traveling, and I think something came down from the league office to get the officials to try to correct this, and I think Foster took it to a whole nother level last night. I don't know whether he got the calls right or wrong. I didn't watch the game, but that's an edict that came down most likely from the league office, and that's another thing that I would use for these gamblers. When the league wanted certain things called in certain games and it was going to be an advantage or a disadvantage, I passed that along, and it affected the point spread.
And that's what you meant today when you said on Twitter that Harden is targeted. You didn't mean he was targeted necessarily only by Foster. You meant he was targeted by the league office. No
doubt. P.J. Carlissimo, we all know he was a coach, Seton Hall and San Antonio Spurs. Great guy. He put out a videotape, and he showed how Harden gets away with pushing off, taking that extra step, which they call a Euro step, which went from getting an extra one step to an extra three steps in his case, and how he's gotten away with this over the course of this year. He had 10 or 15 plays he put on a video, and I'm sure the league office got a hold of that. And every day these referees are given a website that they have to go on and look at plays that the league once called a certain way. I can almost guarantee you that the league office has put plays out with James Harden in it, pushing off or traveling over the All-Star break, and Foster and Smith were the first crew back, and the league wants to crack down on because it's starting to become an embarrassment for them, because obviously he's getting away with pushing off and traveling, and it's all over the TV, and it becomes an embarrassment. So they want to crack down on, most likely before the playoffs start, and they have another embarrassing situation where the wrong team wins a series at the end of a game because the referees miss a call like that.
Tim Donaghy, nice enough to join us. You know better than anybody that the NBA is the one league where everybody feels there's a conspiracy. Does the NBA encourage referees to keep games close, or in playoff series to push it to 7-6?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that knows the game in the NBA that when a team's up by 20 points, the referees officiate a different way. They start giving all the benefits of the calls to the team that's down in that game. It's called the way to control the game and keep everybody happy, because if a coach and a player is down by 20 points and you're still making calls against them, they feel like you're embarrassing them and they get upset. So in order to keep the peace, they try to give the benefit of the calls that the team is down in the game by 20 or 25 points. And what happens is it brings it a little bit closer and it brings viewership back. The same thing with the series in the playoffs.
Is that an edict from the league? Do you feel that? Is that officials talking to coaches? Is that officials talking to officials? How does that dynamic come about?
Each time you referee a game in the playoffs, they have somebody from the league office come in and you go over the game tapes of the previous game. I talk about this in my book at length, where I was in a series in Houston when they were ahead of the Dallas Mavericks. It was 2 or 3 games to 1. And they told us to concentrate on illegal screens on Yao Ming and traveling violations on Yao Ming. And we left that meeting saying, geez, Houston's going to be, at a disadvantage tonight. Not only were they at a disadvantage that night, but they ended up losing the entire series in 7 games to Dallas. So they string these playoff series along to the best of their ability through the referees by telling them and dictating to them what to call through these tapes.
To that point, is it difficult to not make it obvious?
In regard to the league, I mean, I think you've seen many times in a lot of Game 6s where Dick Bavetta was on the game, who claimed to be the NBA's go-to guy, and no matter how many times he made an incorrect call and forced a Game 7 in a series, he still went on to referee in the NBA Finals and received that extra $25,000 bonus. So, I mean, I think the mistakes are clear-cut and obvious at times, but I think it doesn't matter. There's not a job in America where you can make the mistakes that some of these NBA referees make and still get promoted to that next round of the playoffs when it's obvious that you screwed something up.
All right, let me play devil's advocate real quick with you, Tim. I feel like everybody in the world talks right now. So if somebody is rigging a game, fixing a game, doing whatever, my sense has always been too many people would know and somebody's going to put it out there. Is that naive on my side to think? Is there very few people that understand this? How does it work?
Obviously, if you're going to do something like I did, it was kept quiet for 3 or 4 years. We were betting on NBA games and betting on different sports. So I think if you're making money, you'd be smart and wise to keep your mouth shut because you wanted the gravy train to keep rolling. So if it was me, I'd be more than glad to keep my mouth shut knowing I was going to continue to make money.
People always say, to your point, Tim, Game 6, 2002, Lakers-Kings, you didn't do the game, but everybody says that game was rigged. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that so many times. I remember watching it. I was coaching. I was in a hotel. I don't even remember what happened, but I hear it and I hear it and I hear it. It fits what you're saying about Game 6, right? It fits Game 6 wanting to be a Game 7. But wouldn't, if it was, that obvious, wouldn't there be like a ton of people talking about it?
I'm not trying to be a smart aleck with you, but I don't know that you did not Google this prior. I mean, if you look at that Game 6 between Sacramento and the Lakers, I mean, there were almost grand jury hearings to convene over that situation. That was all over the place, and there was also another famous Game 6 with Bavetta with the Portland Trail Blazers when he kind of screwed them a little bit. So, I mean, people have talked about this for years.
I'm not talking about outside. I'm talking about people in the league, people that would know. I mean, I know people have talked about it, and there's been articles written on it, but I mean, like, people inside it, wouldn't they talk?
Well, I know that the FBI did a thorough investigation and talked to a couple people that were retired, and I'd rather not mention their names, but they confirmed the fact that the NBA dictated and told the referees what to call in these games and, had a very strong opinion on Dick Bavetta and what he did in a lot of these Game 6s.
Do you face this, Tim? Like, do you face kind of what Jose Canseco faces? Why would we listen to Tim Donaghy talk about this stuff? Do you face that a lot?
I do, but and I always point back to the fact that Phil Scala wrote the foreword for my book and said I told the truth at every turn. And I realized that he was quoted in this article, and I spoke to him, and he felt like he was grossly misquoted. So I always point back to the fact that why would a wrestling FBI agent write the foreword for my book and tell in the foreword that I told the truth at every turn. So if somebody wants to think that I lied or I'm still lying or whatever, I don't know why a guy of that magnitude would support me in what I wrote.
Yeah, I mean, is it possible right now that games are being fixed by refs?
I don't think the refs are going out and fixing the games. I think it's the league that's fixing the games because they're telling the referees what to call. And when they do that, they're grading them based on that. And there's an enormous amount of money as you advance from the first round to the second round to the third round to the NBA Finals. So I think it's the league office really who's at fault here, not the officials, because they're just going out and doing what they're told to do. and they're being graded based on that, so they're going to do it.
Is it fixing games to say Yao Ming is traveling? Call this on him. Yao Ming has set 5 screens that are illegal. Call him on it. Is that considered fixing rigging? Is that considered anything other than trying to get things right?
Well, it's always, in my mind, they always did it to the team that was down in the series. They emphasized those calls. They didn't go emphasize those calls that were missed for that team that was ahead in the series. So in my mind, yes, they're manipulating the game. So is it fixing? Is it going? Yeah, in my mind, it's a form of doing that because they're doing it in a way to extend the series and extend revenue. So absolutely, but I think it's the league and it's not the officials. The officials are just doing what they're told to do.
So rarely, if ever, was it, hey, look, the Lakers are up 3-2, but I don't care. Shaq is using his backside too much. Call this. It was rarely, if ever, the team that was ahead in the series. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, never the team that was ahead. Always favored the team that was down in the series in these tape sessions, and concentrated. It would be they'd show you 10 plays for the team that's down in the series and maybe throw 1 or 2 in for the team that was up in the series just to not make it look real obvious. But there was a lot of times we walked out of those meetings laughing, saying, God, they want the Lakers to win tonight or they want the Mavericks to win tonight.
Hey, Tim, you went to jail 11 months. What was prison like for you?
Not fun. I mean, you talk about going to prison and being somebody that was a cooperating witness for the government, so you quickly labeled a snitch or a rat, and with that, I was attacked in prison actually, and since I've had 2 knee operations to try to alleviate the pain. So my experience was definitely not good.
So were you? Did anybody come out, hey, I lost money on this game? I mean, did you get attacked because they thought you were a snitch, or did you get attacked because somebody was paying back a debt from the mob, or did somebody just happen to attack you?
No, a guy claimed he was in the mob and, was going to get even with me for being a cooperating witness to the government, was threatening me. And then one day, he just had this long pole and smacked me from behind and kept hitting me until, he was pulled off.
He was trying to kill you.
Well, he's trying to do damage to my knee, and it worked. I don't know if he was trying to kill me, but he was definitely trying to hurt me.
So what about now? You're public. You've embraced, right? I mean, you've embraced the gambling aspect of sports, and you've embraced Twitter. So you're very public. What's life like now for you?
Same old stuff. I've just have my website, refpicks.com. I just work with a bunch of people that are, gambling as a form of entertainment, nothing that's crazy or outlandish where they're getting themselves into trouble. And, I'm fortunate that I have a lot of friends that I still talk to in the FBI. And, if anything is talked about or heard about in regard to me, I'm sure that they would, mention or contact me right away.
Hey, Tim, there's going to be, now that the federal government has said, you can gamble. I was just talking to a guy yesterday, and this is going to happen on your television, where you can bet on whether or not the next pitch is a strike, whether a guy reaches. You can do it as the game is going on. From your experience, what is going to be the impact of legalized gambling and actual live gambling on the sports landscape?
I think what's going to happen is you're going to see another scandal, but I think you're going to see it at the college level in one of these lower division schools where these guys have no chance of making it to the professional sports ranks, and they're going to say, there's a spread on the game that's 15 or 16. Let's win by 8, 9, or 10, and there's no harm in that, and we won't cover the spread. And we'll put a couple dollars in our pocket. I think at the college level is where you're going to see a major scandal sometime in the near future, because so many people are going to be gambling, and there's going to be so many different ways to get in touch with some of these college athletes and get it done.
Do you think we will see another NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball referee go to jail over gambling?
No, because I think that it was obvious what happened to me. I don't think the leagues are not educating these officials and these players like they should have been back when I was there. So I think that, nobody's going to be, maybe I would say, as foolish as I was to do it, but they have the money. When somebody, a small college athlete, doesn't have the money, and they're going to do that to support their family.
You still friends with any NFL or NBA referees? If not, if so, how do they treat you?
I am, and they treat me fine. I just spoke to one that stopped working a year or two ago, and was great with me. So I think they've realized that I made a mistake, and it was a lot of things that the league was doing that was wrong that allowed me to do what I did.
Last thing, Tim, and I appreciate you taking time, man. I really do. I know that I'm sure zillions have asked you, and I very much appreciate it. When you go out and somebody sees you in public, what's the reaction?
I'm fortunate. I've never had anybody that it's been extremely negative. I've had a lot of people to come up to me and say that everybody makes mistakes, and you admitted your mistake and you did your time, and move on and try to forget about it, which is extremely difficult. But I did my time. Like they say, you do the crime, you do the time, and I think it should be something that should be behind me.
Tim, I really appreciate you taking time with us, man. Good luck to you, and thanks again. Thank you very much.
You got it.
All right, that's Tim Donaghy. Four Winds Lakeside in Marina Hotline. If you'd like to react to that, I got a bunch of reaction via text. Thanks to Kyle, Udemark, for getting that hooked up, and thanks to Austin for some of the questions. But there you go, man. Like it or dislike it, I think it's interesting. I think it's really interesting. I think all this stuff is fascinating.